Okay, I think we're ready to get started here. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning for wherever you're joining. Certainly appreciate you all joining this Microsoft 365 Friday California session with me. My name is Richard Calderon, and I'm a modern workplace strategist with a company called the Pate Group. There's a couple of different ways that you could reach out to me. Please reach out to me on Twitter at RCATX and similarly at LinkedIn. And again, today we're going to talk about taming that never-ending to-do list with one of my favorite, actually, Microsoft 365 service called Microsoft To Do. Just want to remind everybody again that these kinds of events are only possible really from the amazing help from our sponsors. So please do, if you have not had a chance yet to, please go visit some of these sponsor websites, follow them on Twitter, et cetera, and show them some appreciation for helping us putting on these events. Okay, so today, what are we going to try to accomplish here? So the goals for this session are a few. We're going to spend some time really just kind of looking at some of the general capabilities and features inside of Microsoft To Do, trying to understand how you can use this for managing your own individual tasks. I'm also going to spend some time talking about some of the ways that I've found to be simple to help you really organize your tasks in To Do and to stay focused and to really just drive better productivity in general. And then ideally, you'll also be able to just realize the benefits of using To Do along with some of these various techniques that I'm going to show you as well. So that's what we're going to try to accomplish. Let's start just generally talking about what is this problem? What's the common problem that we're trying to solve here? So, every single day, especially with everything that's going on in the world these days, you've got a lot on your mind. You've got work-related activities. You've got your home life, et cetera. Maybe you're feeling a little bit stressed about all that and you're struggling to really focus on what you're trying to accomplish. So, you're thinking to yourself, where do I start? What are my priorities? And you certainly don't want to forget or drop the ball on anything. So really, it's critical that you try to get these to-do items really out of your head because, research shows that you can really only hold so many items in your brain at one time. So what do you do? What are some common ways that people have been doing that for a long time now? You might jot some things down on a piece of paper or a notepad. You might grab a stack of sticky notes and then, attach that to your desk or your monitor, or maybe even slap it on your forehead. You might do some things like send yourself an email and then flag it to follow up later so you can remember to do it. Or maybe you might just use any note-taking tool and type a note in only just to forget later not only where it was, but what the tasks were, et cetera. So these can be problematic ways to really try to manage all the things that we all have to do on a day-to-day basis. So a solution that's something we're going to spend a lot of time talking about here today is using a personal task management system. In this case, we're going to talk about Microsoft To Do, which really can enable you to accomplish a number of different things. Number one, first and foremost, is just to be able to stay more focused on what you're working on. And ideally, if you're having conversations or meetings, to just be more attentive to who you're speaking to, et cetera, et cetera. By getting all of these tasks really out of your head and into some other system, it also just frees up mental space for you, which an effect of that certainly can be to decrease your stress levels and just generally feel more content throughout the day. And who wouldn't want that, really? So let's talk about this in the context of Microsoft 365. So Microsoft 365 has a pair of what they call their kind of key task management endpoints. And those kind of depend on what the purpose of what you're trying to track would be. Microsoft To Do, again, is really centered around your individual tasks, your personal tasks tracking. So I think of those as my tasks. And then Microsoft Planner is a separate application, although there's a relationship between them, that are really geared more around teams and groups of people that are trying to accomplish a set of tasks together. So you can think of those as our tasks. So To Do for my tasks and Planner for our tasks in this context. So just kind of introducing Microsoft To Do to those of you that maybe have just sort of less familiar, maybe hadn't heard about it before. Again, it is this single application and service inside of Microsoft 365. It's intended for being able to help you really just track your daily activities. So think of it as a sort of an intelligent personal task tracking tool, focusing on things that are important. There's some intelligence in the service because it's in Microsoft 365 using the Microsoft Graph to be able to recommend and make suggestions to you based on certain things that you might need to get accomplished. There's a number of different capabilities in the tool to really kind of help you break down tasks into even more manageable tasks and things like setting due dates and reminders, et cetera, and even other capabilities such as the ability to share tasks lists with family or friends or colleagues or whoever it may be. There's a lot of different capabilities that are built into To Do. And so again, we're going to demo and spend some time looking at that here just a little bit. Again, if you're not familiar with where you can get Microsoft To Do, the good news is it's available on a number of different platforms and from different endpoints. As you might expect, you can get to it from a Windows 10 app. There's a downloadable app for Mac. There are certainly mobile-based apps for iOS and Android. And then absolutely you can get to it from the web as well, not just from Microsoft Edge, but really any modern web browser. So if you're a fan of Google Chrome or Safari on the Mac, et cetera, you can get to it from the web as well. So before we dive too far into the demoing and talking about the capabilities, I do want to just mention one specific consideration around, or a couple of specific considerations around setting up Microsoft To Do in Microsoft 365. So your users do have to have a license for Microsoft To Do. And so again, for most enterprise organizations, if you've enabled a Microsoft 365 E3 license or something like that, you probably are automatically already enabled for Microsoft To Do, but at least know that you have to be licensed for it. And then you also have to have your mailbox enabled in Exchange Online because that's where all the tasks data lives. It lives in Exchange Online. And because of that, it's automatically integrated with your Outlook tasks. So for those of you that have maybe been using Outlook tasks for quite a while now, there's a direct integration and relationship between tasks in To Do and Exchange Online. So just wanted to point that out for you for those organizations that are maybe still with Exchange Mailbox on premises. You won't be able to use Microsoft To Do until you get your mailbox up in the cloud, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and flip to some demo here because this is really the stuff I think you probably want to see. I'm going to start with the Windows 10 app in this case. So again, this is a desktop app that, again, you go to the Microsoft Store actually to go and download that. So go to the Microsoft Store in Windows 10 and do a search for Microsoft To Do, and you'll find that app that you can download. But as you can see, it's a pretty simplified user interface here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about these on the left-hand side of the screen. They refer to these as smart lists. So there's some smarts that are kind of built in these various lists and so forth. And then as you can see here underneath that, I've got a whole series of kind of custom lists that I've created for myself as well too, to be able to track these items. But the most important thing I want you to just kind of know here to begin with is this initial screen that you're landing on is this smart list screen called My Day. And the whole idea behind My Day is to try to allow you to get really intentional with which tasks you're actually going to try to focus on and reasonably try to accomplish this day. Again, because we all know that for the most part, as the days go on and we're adding more and more tasks to our list, it's just this ever growing, never ending list of tasks. And it's just unreasonable for us to think that we could actually get them all completed on any one given day. It's just not possible. So in order to just get organized and also to have this sense of accomplishment at the end of each day, that's what the My Day list is really for, allowing you to really just focus on some specific items. So this suggestions list that you see here, let me kind of give you an example of how you do that. So again, you open the app, it sort of starts off like this. There is in the upper right-hand corner of the screen this little icon here that looks like this little light bulb that you can turn on. When you click that, it opens up this panel on the right-hand side that's called Suggestions. And so again, how is it suggesting tasks to you here? Well, again, these are tasks that you have entered or have, for whatever reason, they have shown up inside of To Do. We'll talk about that as well in a minute. That for various reasons, again, Microsoft 365 is suggesting that they be ones that you might add to your day. So if they are ones that have a due date of today, for example, you might see that some of these are indicated as today. That's a due date of today. Maybe you've flagged them as being important, so they've got higher importance than others. Any that you might have added recently, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a number of ways that Microsoft 365 suggests these various tasks to you in My Day. But really, from this point now, it's as simple as just kind of walking your way through it. And again, being very intentional with choosing which ones you want to add to your day. So let's say maybe I do want to, in fact, add this one-on-one. Let's reschedule. I want to add the Book the Valet service for the event. the keynote demo planning, and maybe I've got some other ones down here that I want to add as well. You know, I've got a few that I really want to focus on. So again, while it's really tempting to just check these off and just kind of, you know, add, and then have your My Day list grow to 20 items, one of my first recommendations for you would be, as you're just starting off on this, is don't be tempted to do that. Try to keep that list short if at all possible, maybe 5 items or so forth, and really get to where you can track those throughout the day and then check them all off ideally, so that again, you really feel pretty accomplished with being able to get those done, okay? So in this case, I've added a few items to my day. So let's go to some of these now. So if I click on some of these, you'll notice that the panel here in this case is actually showing you more detail about the tasks themselves. So like this Project Falcon review final deliverables, there's a number of different things that I can do to a task. Number one is I can add what they call steps. So steps here, without kind of typing too many things, really just think of them as subtasks, okay? So if I wanted to, I could break this down into even smaller work items to where I would have to check off all of the subtask items, at least for myself, before I would say, okay, I can really check off the main task in this case to be complete. So you can add what are called steps. You can certainly add reminders, and there's some pretty simple ways that when you just click on Remind Me, that it says maybe you want to be reminded a little bit later today, be reminded tomorrow, be reminded next week, or you certainly can be explicit and pick a date and time, say, you know, Wednesday of next week at 8 a.m. or something like that is when I want to go ahead and say that I want to be reminded about that. And then the due date might be, again, if I want to be reminded about it at a particular time, it's because I want a little bit of heads up before it's in fact due. So maybe the due date is on the 29th. So remind me at, you know, first thing in the morning on a couple of days before it's actually due in this case. You can also set up recurring, that to be a recurring event, I guess, if you will. So for example, like in our business where we kind of fill in sort of a weekly timesheet so that we have a track of what we've accomplished throughout the week and for billability, et cetera, you can set up items to be weekly recurring, daily recurring, monthly, and so on and so forth. I'm going to skip the assign to for a moment because that really applies more to when you're sharing tasks and task lists, but you can also add files just like you might expect to add and attach files. And then you certainly can add notes and, you know, additional information here. This is all, again, a great way for you to be able to just have much additional detail and information about particular tasks as you're going through this. One other thing I'll mention here is that this little star in To Do is just a simplified way to be able to mark that as important. So when you click the little star in an item, you're basically kind of telling yourself that that's a priority item. I want to make sure that I'm addressing that one. If I'm running out of time at the end of the day and I've got a few more on my list, I might want to address the ones that are flagged as important in this case, okay? So I mentioned these smart lists over here. So a couple things I want to just point out about them here briefly. Number one is there's a list here called important, and that's exactly what it sounds like, is any of those items that I have marked with or checked the little star next to them has been indicated as important. So in To Do, there's really kind of only two priority statuses. It's either kind of standard priority or it's important. In some of the other services like Planner, you might have some additional priorities you could set, like it's really urgent or it's low priority. But today, at least in Microsoft To Do, it's either important or not important. So this smart list is continually showing you items that you've flagged as important. And so that's great that you can come and look at that at any point in time. Planned is any task that you have set a due date on. So again, it's not required that you set due dates on your tasks, but if you have in fact set due dates on tasks, then those are going to show up in this list. And so you can kind of get a little bit of a glance here quickly as to which ones are due today, which ones are going to be due upcoming, which ones are going to be due a little bit later and so forth. And so you can get a sense of that there. There's a couple of other smart lists that are kind of self-explanatory. All is just all of the different items that you have in To Do. So it's crossing over all these custom lists that I've created and so forth as well. Sometimes that's useful when you just want to see everything at a glance. It can also be a little bit overwhelming, but nonetheless, it's nice to have that here. Completed also is exactly what it sounds like. It's just going to show you everything that you have checked off your list over time. And I think that that one is also really good, kind of just mentally to go and see all the things you've accomplished over time as well. Assigned to You is a really special smart list this is one of those, again, benefits of Microsoft 365. There's a connection here between Microsoft To Do and Planner. So if you are a member of a number of teams or those teams are using Microsoft Planner, and then in those Planner plans, there have been tasks that have been assigned to you, then automatically those tasks in Planner that have been assigned to you will show up in this smart list. And so that's really nice, because then in that case here, you can just use To Do to really keep track of both your personal tasks as well as ones that belong to the team, but that have been assigned to you in this case. So as an example, if I went to Keynote demo planning, you notice here that this particular task has been assigned from the product launch event plan. And I've even got an option here to open it in Teams, which I'll show you from the web experience here in just a moment. But every single one of these, you'll see that it's showing you from a Microsoft Planner plan here inside the smart list. This other kind of the last smart list in the list that's called flagged email is a direct integration with Outlook tasks and Outlook. So that also is exactly what it sounds like. So if you're running Outlook, obviously, and you are kind of accustomed to flagging emails as a way to keep track of things, then anytime you flag an email inside of Outlook, it will also automatically show up inside this list, which again is just yet another way for you to be able to easily come and take kind of a quick glance as to any of the items that you flagged. And so when I look at this particular item, as you can see here too, it's got the email body itself in here, and it's also got a little link here that allows me to open it in Outlook, which again, I'll show you here in a second from the web experience. But those are the smart lists themselves. Tasks, by the way, this one here, that's kind of the default list, if you will. So if you don't really put a category, if you don't organize it in any way or so forth, that you're just creating tasks, they're just going to show up by default here under the tasks list. And the ability to add a new task, review my tasks list items is something I want to kind of get accustomed to doing. You can just hit enter, and then there's that new task. It just enters it right away. You obviously can click on it, get the little panel to show up. I will point out that if you did, let me just kind of delete this and do this one again. So if I said review my tasks lists, before you hit enter, you also have the options over here to just go ahead and set some of these things, such as a reminder tomorrow, such as a when it's due next week. Actually, I did that opposite. This is the when it's due. So let's say it's due next week. Remind me tomorrow. And if there was, in fact, a recurrence that you wanted to set to it, you could just do all of those kind of in one action and then go ahead and just hit enter. Now you've actually entered in that additional metadata on the task kind of in kind of one act. OK. All right, so then just kind of moving along, some of the other things just to point out. Again, I've created these custom lists for myself here. This is really super easy to do. There is no rhyme or reason to this necessarily. Everybody kind of thinks about organizing their tasks in different ways and so forth. So just when you think about, okay, maybe I could group these tasks together in some kind of an organized way, then creating a list for them might make sense to do. That's as simple as coming down here to the bottom of the app and just hitting new list. You say a new list, it's going to give you the ability to create it. It starts off as untitled, but this is my new list in this case here. And you're kind of off and running. And now you've got a new list to work with. I'll point out here, just in case you're interested, that I like the ability to add these emojis to not only my list, but sometimes even the tasks items themselves, just as a way to kind of give me a little bit of a visual indicator as I'm scanning through what those lists are for and so forth. And so there's a couple of different ways to do that in To Do. Number one, when you create a brand new list, you notice you get this little kind of emoji selector that just shows up by default next to a list. And so when you click on that, it'll just sort of drop down and you can just pick from one of those. But you can also, if you just really wanted to, you could, at least in the Windows paradigm, when you hold down the Windows period, so Windows period on your keyboard, that keyboard combination also pops down a even lengthier list of emojis that you can pick from. And so again, if you wanted to pick something like, one of these angry faces or whatever, you could also add some emojis to lists as well too. So just kind of something to share in case you find that something to be interesting. So you could reorganize tasks in lists super easy. Like I can drag and drop these and move these into a task. So if I want to move or into a list, so if I wanted to drag an item, I could just move it here in this case. You can also right click on any item and then be able to say move task, and then it pops up your list so that you can move and reorganize and rearrange tasks pretty easily. Okay, so tasks list is one way to organize, and then you'll also notice that I've got these groupings of lists as well too. And so again, I tend to track all of my list task items, whether they be work tasks or my personal tasks. I track them all in one place in my work-related Microsoft 365 to-do account. You don't have to do it that way. There actually is a consumer version of To-Do. So if you have a Microsoft account or Outlook.com, for example, then whether you know it or not, you can also get to To-Do in your consumer service as well too. And then you could certainly kind of flip-flop back and forth between the two and say, I'm going to put my work tasks only under my work account and then put my personal life tasks only under my consumer account. For me, that just doesn't suit my workflow very well because of that switching, of having to switch accounts. For me, it's just, it makes more sense for me just to kind of keep track of it all in one place. So I put them all here. And the way that I do that, again, just to simplify my list organization, is I've got a work list group and I've got a life list group. And then even in some cases, archived is really just my way arbitrarily to say, in some cases, maybe if I don't really need that list any moving forward, I can very easily just say, okay, if this right now I'm not doing any traveling, and so I just want to kind of move that one out of the way temporarily, I can just sort of put it under archived, and then of course I can always kind of reactivate that one later if I wanted to move it back into my lists. I can always do that as well. Okay, so creating groupings is really just as simple as there's a small icon just to the left of new list here, this icon that allows you to create a list group. And so this is a new group. And then now that I've got that group, it's as simple as just kind of dragging and dropping items into, or lists themselves into these groups to reorganize. Okay, so pretty straightforward for being able to create new lists and to create new list groups. One last thing I want to show you here, and then I want to switch to some other experiences, is there's also this notion inside of Microsoft To Do of being able to do hashtagging. And you might have seen that in a couple of different places here, like I've got hashtag Project Falcon, and in some other places I might have hashtag Litware, et cetera, and like, what is this and what does the hashtagging do? So just know that when you create a task, and let's say I want to do another, Project Falcon in this case, new task, when you create a hashtag, what that essentially allows you to do is kind of, again, apply even additional metadata, if you will, to the task. So while there is some set metadata here in this panel that pops up, you can add some additional metadata, and the value of that is then now any tasks that have been in fact tagged with that hashtag, regardless of what task list they live in, you have the ability to just click on them now. And when you click on them now, it's essentially doing a search. So it's executing a search in Microsoft To Do, but it's showing you any of your tasks that you have now tagged with that hashtag. And so why that's cool is because, again, you can maybe be organizing your tasks into different lists. As you can see here, like I've got a Project Falcon task that I've organized into one of my projects lists, but I've got yet another Project Falcon task that I've organized into my sales and marketing list, because really it's more of a sales related task. But if I wanted to see them all again in one view, I can do that because I have hashtagged them this way. Okay. So as far as I can tell so far, there's no limit to the number of hashtags you can create. So really, it's kind of up to your imagination as to how you would want to apply additional hashtags, just to, again, create these different ways of kind of slicing and dicing and viewing your tasks. All right. Okay, so let's move on. I do want to show you just a couple of other ways that you can get to do experiences. I mentioned that you can get to it in the web browser, and then I definitely want to show you for a few minutes my favorite experience, which is on the mobile app. But from the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 homepage, again, probably the simplest way to find this is you're going to see here that it's in your app bar. It'll certainly be in the app launcher. Again, this is if you're licensed to use it. But when you view the To Do mobile, web-based experience, it's a little bit trimmed down. You don't get kind of all of the background images and things like that, but it's very feature rich. And again, as you can see, it's very similar, if not identical in many cases, to what you see here when you're looking at it. If I go to my day, in this case here, and I go to my day, you'll see that it's really, you'll see that it's really just the same set of information here, although this seems to have had a little bit of a hiccup on the syncing there. But it's the same information. When you click on them, you'll get these tasks that pop out on the right-hand side, just like you saw before. There's kind of one additional thing really that's important here, two rather, that's important about the web-based experience. One is centered around suggestions. So in the web experience for To-Do, in addition to the suggestions that you'd see in the desktop app, you're also going to see, at least right today, you're going to see some tasks that seem important. And that's something, again, that's kind of based off of what the Microsoft Graph is looking at, a number of different variables and so forth, and trying to understand some things that it might suggest that are important to you. And so if in fact it's something important, then clearly, again, you can always just click on the plus sign and add it to my day. You can also train the Microsoft Graph to say, no, this isn't relevant to me. So thanks, but no thanks, this one was not relevant. And so as you're doing this kind of thing over time, again, the Microsoft Graph starts to learn more things about what you're indicating as that was important, that wasn't relevant, et cetera. And so again, the AI is you're trying to train it to become more useful to you. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to point out that, again, is only in the web experience for some reason, is that you have the ability to pick categories. These categories are actually tied directly to your Outlook categories. So if you use categories in Outlook to tag your email, et cetera, then those categories, exact same ones, will show up here inside of To-Do so that you can then tag them. And again, this is only in the web-based experience at the moment. Not sure if that's when that may be coming also to the desktop, but that is something just to keep in mind. The other thing I wanted to point out from the web is just the fact that, you know, you may or may not be using or have explored the fact that you can get to Outlook through the web. I would certainly encourage you to look at that because I find it to also be really useful for my workflow. But there is something really cool about this in Outlook in that when you are in Outlook on the web, you get this other kind of feature that they also, ironically, call My Day inside of Outlook on the web. And it's this little icon here. When you click on that, it pops open this panel that allows you to be able to see all of your to-do items here in one fell swoop. Why is that cool? Because what it lets you do is it lets you very easily just drag items from your email. You notice I'm kind of click and hold. I'm dragging these items over here to create a task directly into one of my task lists from my email. So if email is a way that you are accustomed to being able to keep track of items and create tasks from them, consider using this Outlook on the web experience. Open this My Day panel. Look at options for being able to drag email over, because again, that's a simple way to be able to create tasks based off of email items. What other thing I'll point out while I'm here is that let's say, like in the example of the email I have in front of me here, that there happens to be more than one ask and therefore more than one task that needs to get created from this. So while I could certainly take this and drag it over as I just showed you, or as I mentioned earlier, when you flag email in Outlook, it automatically gets added to that flagged email list inside of To-Do. Another thing you can do, again, this is only in the web experience, is you can actually highlight text in the body of the email to be able to then create tasks from it. So let me give you an example of that. I'm going to go just to my general tasks list here. If I said, okay, please send me that Excel file, but then he also said, but I could also use your input on this company vision slide that's in this deck. So those are two separate tasks. So I want to create two tasks out of it. So can you please send me that Excel file is one. So I'm going to highlight send me that Excel file. And as soon as I let go, notice what happens. This little tiny pop-up here pops up. And there's two things that show up. But the one thing I'm going to use right now is this thing called create a task from To-Do. And when I do that, you'll notice that it just automatically creates a task based off of at least the highlighted text. Now I can always go in here and add more additional information to kind of make it clear, but that was one way that I can take from this email creating a task. And then I can also do the same thing here. So use input on the company vision slide. It creates this new task again here. So now I've got two separate tasks that I created from this one email. And again, even when I click on those, if I went to To-Do in the web, let me go, sorry, go back to To-Do in the web, go into my tasks, you see that those tasks are here. You notice again, I've got a very simple way from either of those tasks now to easily get back to the email that I was referring to, okay? So that's kind of some of the benefits I feel that are compelling around the web interface. And then lastly, I'm going to show you at least one thing here, because I know we're kind of up against the time for the session, and I want to make sure to leave some time for some Q&A as well, is I want to show you from the mobile experience here, some of the things that I think are probably my favorite ways. Again, this is actually my favorite way of using To-Do is from mobile. So I use an iOS device, an iPhone, but again, you'll get the same experience from Android. You notice that I have the To-Do app actually pinned down here to the bottom of my my phone because I use it so regularly. But when I load the To-Do app again, you're going to see that it's basically the exact same, if not really the exact same experience from the desktop app. I can click the little hamburger menu and get to all my various tasks and so forth. I can click on any of them and see all the detail, add reminders and so forth, check them off as I go. It's really, really super easy to use. But by far my favorite thing to do with my phone, because I've got it with me pretty much all the time, whether I'm here working from home or if I've got to go out and run an errand, is I use this really to help me keep track of things from the moment that I remember something. And while I could certainly just click on add task down here at the bottom and then start using, you know, my kind of thumbing at it and making errors and spelling, et cetera, my favorite way of doing this is, you know, every phone has this capability of turning the microphone on and then letting you just talk at your phone. And so I like doing this because I can really get just fast with entering a task and even add some smarts to it, something like this. Get that really important task that's way too long for me to type on my phone keyboard done. Remind me today at 4 p.m. And then there you go. So now I've just talked at my phone, created a new task. It added a couple of extra words like remind me, et cetera, et cetera. But you notice I even was able to say remind me at 4 p.m. and it understood what that meant and so forth. And I was able to put that in. So I use the To-Do app from my phone really as much, if not more, quite frankly, than the desktop app of To-Do or even the mobile app. But really for my workflow, it just kind of depends on where I am. I'm using all these various apps really kind of continuously throughout the day and throughout the week. So those are those experiences. Let me just kind of wrap up the presentation here by pointing out a couple of things. Are you up for the challenge? So something that I'm kind of encouraging of everyone and anyone who listens to me talk through this type of session is to commit to what I consider to be a short 14-day challenge. Now, again, while I know that most studies will show that it really takes anywhere up to 2 to 3 months of really changing a habit for it to become a habit, I'm willing to say that you could actually do this in about a 2-week time period. So if you haven't really invested into using Microsoft To Do, I would challenge all of you here attending today to commit to trying it for up to 14 days. The first few days, just keep it simple. Just add anything that you need to accomplish that you can think of to your task list. And they could be simple tasks. They could be tasks that are way out in the future or big tasks, whatever they may be. But try to add, up to 10 or so, maybe more. And then start adding a few of those to My Day, like I showed you, and then just check them off as you complete them. The goal, at least for me, and I would encourage you too, is at the end of every day, my day, that smart list that's called My Day, would be empty because I will have checked them all off the list basically, okay? So start with something small like that. And then after a few days, start doing some other things. Create some new lists to organize. Obviously, start taking advantage of the due dates and reminders, using hashtags to organize, and just have fun doing it. Because again, I think it is an extremely satisfying experience to be checking these items off the list. And especially when you use the app, you'll notice that there's this very satisfying little ding that you'll hear as you're checking tasks off the list. And so again, I would encourage you to try this out. So a few closing thoughts, and then we'll certainly open it up to some Q&A if there's any. As I mentioned, take advantage of the mobile app. So if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, go to those respective app stores and go search for Microsoft To Do, download that. log in if you're on Microsoft 365 with your work account, and then just start entering away. If you kind of like the whole emojis things like me, and you like to be able to add those maybe to the list and so forth, if you hadn't heard of it, I would encourage you checking out emojipedia.org. It's got tons of emojis out there you can pick from, and they're all kind of standard Unicode, if you will, so they're going to work across different platforms. So check out emojipedia.org. And again, it does take time and lots of practice really to develop a new habit. But again, I would encourage you just to kind of keep it up. And eventually, I feel like these are the types of things that can become part of your daily workflow. You know, review your tasks each day, add more, and just enjoy, again, that ability to check them off the list. And please let me know how you're doing with that. You know, reach out to me on Twitter at RCATX. If you are going to post anything about how you're developing these new ways of doing things with Microsoft To Do, please do hashtag those posts with Microsoft To Do, and also To Do 14-day challenge, if you would. Because again, I'd love to be able to see how you guys are doing with that. And if I get the opportunity, I'm certainly also willing to reach back out to you as well and answer any additional questions you may have. So that is the extent of this presentation, this session. I thank you very much for attending, and I'll certainly open it up to any questions that might have popped up at this point.
Thanks, Richard.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I don't see anything in the chat window at the moment now, but is there an option if people want to bring themselves off of mute, they can?
Yep, give me 1 second. I'll just enable it for the room, and then
Okay.
We can go that way. Let's see, allow. There we go.
Let's see.
So they can come off mute for now if they need to, and when we're done, we'll turn the block back on.
Great. I do see a post from Frederic. Thanks. Glad to see that maybe you got a couple of things out of the session, and also glad to know that you're using To Do. So thanks for joining again. And again, if anybody has any questions, got a few more minutes or so here. Happy to answer some, or if you want to see something again. I know we kind of went through, just sort of blazed through all these various features and capabilities, but also happy to show those as well. Okay, I see a comment post here. It says, wish there was an easy way to use To Do with Android. Would love to be able to say, hey, Google, and add a To Do. You know, Prashantha, that's a really good question. Again, I'm not as familiar on the Android side of things. I am an iPhone user and have been for quite some time. So I do know that there actually is some integration with Siri that works on the Apple side. I kind of feel like it should work with an Android device as well too, but I'm not certain. I can look into that, and then again, if you connect with me on Twitter, or if you connect with me on LinkedIn, again, you can either do a search for Richard Calderon, or it's just LinkedIn/n/RCATX. Also happy to try to see if I can get some answers to you for that. And for that matter, I think I will I'll post this out here again. So the Twitter and the LinkedIn info. Okay, that's a couple different ways you guys can get in touch with me. Let's see, Frederic says, when my client To Do broke, I was very unhappy. I found that the online app was a lot slower. Was it just my Wi-Fi or something? Good question. I'm not sure, quite honestly, there. I am curious to know, when you said when your client To Do broke, kind of what happened with that there. The main thing that I would say I've experienced occasionally, it's not often, is sometimes there's a synchronization glitch that might occur, and that could come from any of my endpoints. So whether I've been kind of entering stuff into my phone, or whether I've entering stuff into the mobile app, into my phone, or whether it's been the desktop app, and then all of a sudden, yeah, things didn't sync. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. what you're just saying right there, Frederic, where it didn't sync anymore, but then kind of removing and reinstalling it, it came back. I will point out something here just to use the time. So in the desktop app, for example, if for some reason things just don't seem like they're syncing and it's stuck, one thing you might try actually is if you click up here up top onto where it shows your account and maybe your avatar, you can go down to settings, and there's a number of different things in here that you can configure in terms of settings for Microsoft to do. But one of the things that's here is there's a big button that says sync. And even though it says everything's synced, let's go, you can also kind of force that sync in that way there. And so possibly that's something that also might have kind of unstuck that problem, Frederic, when you had it, or maybe not, I'm not sure. But the fact that you were able to remove it and reinstall it and get it to work again, you know, glad to know that that helped in that case. I will also point out, let me just get this pulled back up again, just so that you can see it. Yeah, absolutely. Just so that you could see back to Rashantha's question about the kind of easy integration with Android. And again, while I'm not as familiar with it on the Android side, for iOS, there is a little bit of settings that you kind of have to set up to make the Siri integration work simply. But here we go. So in the To-Do app again, there is the ability to, again, under settings. So let me just kind of show you where I am. So if you're on My Day and you kind of, you know, go back from lists to your lists view, and then here, if you tap on your name, then it pops up this settings just similar to what it was on the desktop app. And again, you're going to see a lot of the same capabilities here, the things that you can turn on and off. There's even a little sync option here too that you can kind of click on to sort of force the sync to occur. But at least for iOS, there is a Siri Shortcuts option. And so Siri Shortcuts options allow you to be able to create two specific Siri shortcuts, at least for now, one to be able to add a task and one to be able to open a list. And just so you know what's happening behind the scenes when you do that, I'll just kind of point out where that is. When you go to settings inside of iOS, in this case, there's a app for reminders. And again, while this maybe seems a little counterintuitive, you know, the Reminders app is the kind of built-in iOS app for being able to effectively remind you of various things and so forth. But there is this ability to get into Siri and search. And this is actually not what I was wanting to show you. It's actually this defaults list. Okay, so when you set this up and you basically now kind of have your work account, if you will, sort of tied into your iPhone in this case, then under default list, you'll have the option to be able to show an exchange list that you want to be the default list, that when you're telling Siri, hey Siri, go add a task, that it'll add that task into one of these lists. And so again, this is the list. As you can see, they're the identical lists from my to-do list that I've created. And so now in this case, I can actually use Siri. I don't use this because I've just gotten in the habit of doing it other ways, but you could use Siri to be able to talk at Siri, have her remind you or have her add new items to tasks lists. And when you say, hey Siri, add a new task, again, by this setup, it'll just automatically drop those tasks into to-do. So again, so for those of you that are kind of well invested into the Siri method of keeping track and doing things, that's one way that it integrates with to-do pretty nicely. So just kind of a long-winded way to basically say that I don't know, but it seems like it should have a way to do that with Google as well too. And again, I'm happy to look into that and see if I can find some more information. Okay, we've got maybe a couple more minutes, I think, left in the session time. Any other questions from anyone on the line at this point? If so, I think Ryan set it up for you. Feel free to take yourself off of mute if you'd like to ask a question, or certainly just drop a question in the window. Okay, well, that said, I thank you very much. Again, really appreciate you guys attending my session. Again, I encourage you to take the To-Do 14-day challenge. Follow me on Twitter. Tweet out how you're finding the use of To-Do, and if in fact it's making a change and a difference in the way that you're able to focus and track things on a day-to-day basis. And enjoy the rest of Microsoft 365 Friday. Appreciate it.